very first thing I want to start out with is the soil. Prescott soils can vary from sandy to pure granite. So if you have good drainage, that's basically the best thing that you need for desert plants, because they can tolerate dry conditions, but they don't usually like to sit in a pool of water. So the number one thing you can do is to check your drainage and assure that you do have draining soil. If you're in a rock spot and it's just a little too hard to dig a little bit bigger, and you can add some aggregate to the bottom so there's an escape route for the water. I like to fill a hole with water and see how long it takes it to perk. Perk means for the water to dissipate or go down. So what we like to do is fill that hole with water and wait. How long does it take? If you're in the sand, it's just a matter of moments. Within 10 minutes, the water is gone. But in some of these other spots where you have a high caliche, or perhaps maybe darn cactus bit me. I might have to move in. If you have a lot of caliche or clay, sometimes that water will pool for a long time, or if you've actually dug a hole in a rock, that water might sit for a long time. Basically, our window is 12 hours. If you fill that hole with water and it takes longer than 12 hours for the water to perk out or to leach out, you want to think of another spot. These guys just don't want to sit in that kind of water. If you have a drainage issue, we can solve that by digging deeper holes, adding some inorganic aggregate, sand, gravel, something that will not decompose. A lot of people have a tendency to dig a hole really deep, and in order to set that plant at the right planting level, they're going to add mulch underneath it. Well, what happens to that mulch when it starts to decompose? It goes away. If the plant is sitting on top of mulch and the mulch goes away, the plant's going to sink. If the plant sinks, then it's down in the bottom, and where's the water going? Right into the crown of that plant. These guys all like to sit right above and let the water run outward. So your best bet is to use non-organic, inorganic. That means sand, gravel, native soil, anything that isn't going to break down. If it breaks down into smaller pieces, so maybe you have rocks that are decomposed granite, it's going to break down into smaller chunks of granite. It's still granite. It's still there. It's not going to just disappear. But if it's got carbon in it, like bark, mulch, manure, any of those things that came from something that was once living, it's going to eventually decompose and go away and leave a void. Voids equal sinking holes. These guys don't want to sit in sinking holes. They want to sit on the top of a little bit of a mound so the water can go away. So we've dug our hole, we've perked it out. Within 12 hours, the water is gone. We've got a good spot to plant in. We still want to practice the same planting procedures we would with other things. We want to mix a little bit of good organic material on the backfill where the roots are going to expand. We want the plant to sit in its normal spot, but in order to encourage those roots to spread out, because that's what makes drought-tolerant plants so drought-tolerant, is they have massive root structures. So we want to encourage those roots to spread outward. How do we do that? We amend that soil. Some people on your drier plants will amend it with a little bit of sand, or they can actually buy a cactus mix. If you see on the end there, I've got the cactus mix from Grow Well. It's a nice blend of soil that has vermiculite and other highly draining particles in it. So what it does is it creates air pockets for the roots to grow into. If you want to mix your own, you can use mulch and add sand or vermiculite yourself. Some people will just use pumice stones or small gravel and mix it in. But what that does is it creates gaps. We don't want the plant to go from rich soil in its nursery container to sad natural soil here in Prescott, so we create a transition zone, and that's where that amendment comes in. We create a transition by adding something different than what the native soil has to offer. That way we have really rich soil in the center of the root ball when the plant comes out of its nursery container, say that 10 times fast. Pull it out of its nursery container, it's rich. Look at the soil. I'm going to pull this guy out, and you can see how black and rich that is. That's good looking soil. If you've looked at Prescott's native dirt, it doesn't look like that, does it? It's sandy, sometimes it's rocky, but it doesn't have a lot of organic in it. So this plant He likes that organic stuff. He's like, ooh, this is good. I'm gonna grow here. There's lots of food, there's lots of moisture, there's lots of stuff. The only thing it's missing is space. So we give it space by putting it in our native soil, but the plant says, ew, this doesn't taste good. It doesn't have anything in it for me. That's where the amendment comes in. So if you're digging your hole the same size as your nursery container, basically all you're doing is planting that container, that plant, into a smaller in-ground container. We want to make that hole bigger, 2 to 3 times the size, and in some cases even larger. If you have poor drainage, dig a wider soil hole. That depth needs to be set at the same for the plant when it's in the ground, but if you have drainage issues, dig it deeper and add some inorganic aggregate underneath. Gravel, sand, whatever you want to put underneath, and then mix your backfill with your good rich stuff. We want to add about 1/3 amendment to 2/3 native. That way the plant doesn't get too spoiled in its little hole and it'll start to reach out. Because the key to a healthy plant is healthy roots, and drought tolerant plants have the best roots of them all. So we talked